Hi there. Welcome to the Right Here, Right Now live show. This show has one simple question. What's on your heart and mind right here, right now in this moment? We explore the depths and breadths of our humanity through that one simple question over the course of 30 to 45 minutes. I hope that you'll join us. I hope you'll enjoy the exploration. And this tune was created for me personally by the incredible Peter Griffiths, one half of the amazing Mind Takeaway. Do let us know what you think. Let us know what you take away. And of course, we always welcome challenges too. Hope to see you on the exploration. Well, good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Right Here, Right Now live show. This is the last one of 2021. And as I was just describing with wonderful Tony Cosgrove, who's my guest today, he is number 54 of this crazy experiment that is the Right Here, Right Now show. How are you, Tony? How are you doing?
I'm very good. I'm very good. Thank you for inviting me along for what is the last day of term, when traditionally the kids can bring their toys into play. Thank you for looking at me through that lens.
I love it. Well, I'm looking forward to finding out what you're playing with today. But let people know, Tony, if you will, whether they're watching live or they watch this back on replay, a little bit about yourself before we get going.
Yeah, so I work for an organisation called Cosgroves. We do a variety of things, but the one thing that we do a lot of is we help HR leaders look after their shop window. We help HR leaders to get their story straight, to get their comms straight, to deliver a fantastic service on behalf of their business. Now, an awful lot of people do that, but the thing that we think is uniquely different about us is we do that knowing that everybody's brain is full, knowing that people need something different to cut through the noise, and the same old is not good enough anymore. So we try and look at it in a different way, in a way that actually grabs people's attention and is effective. So in the past, we have done all sorts of stuff. We built Santa's grotto in the middle of central London in July once. We once went to a Christmas barbecue dressed in like Hawaiian shirts and Bermuda shorts, and we tried to give out everybody free alcohol and tried to organize a summer barbecue while it was snowing outside. I've done workshops dressed as the Emperor of Prussia, as a Portuguese fisherman, and as Jeremy Paxman. And all of those things are designed to grab people's attention and make them listen to what's happening so that they can respond and just make work a little bit better.
That's fantastic. Well, thanks for sharing that. And I've got to say, for anyone again that's watching live or watching this back, one of the reasons I was really keen to get Tony on the show is that we've been connected, inverted commas, for quite some time on LinkedIn, but never really had a dialogue. And Tony, one of these attention-grabbing moments, was just brilliant, a very authentic call out the blue. I got a mobile phone number that I didn't recognize. I was like, do I answer that? Like, it's not in my phone. I don't know who it is. For whatever reason, I picked it up and it was Tony just checking in. And like, genuinely, Tony just checking in, which was like, I don't know why it surprised me so much, but I thought it was a lovely touch.
Well, I think, what can I say? It's very kind of you to say that. Thank you very much. But, life is just a series of human connections, isn't it? And I think, what's interesting, and I know you've got one question for me. I'm comes that in a second. But I think sometimes when we come to work, we forget about all the good stuff we do outside of work. So as an example, we know outside of work that telling stories are great. Kids withholding a story from a young child is a punishment, isn't it? Like, if you don't behave yourself, you won't get a second story tonight. Oh, please, I love a story. And then what do we do when we come to work? We use spreadsheets. And, and it's like no part of our brain has evolved to deal with spreadsheets. It's evolved to deal with stories and connections. And we kind of forget that sometimes, that, actually what we like is what we're quite naturally good at, just human connections. Use the force. It's there. Work with it.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I don't care about asking the question. We're off down a rabbit hole already. But I will ask you the question, because it might be linked, it might not be. So this wonderful Monday, what is on your heart and mind right here, right now, in this particular moment, Tony?
So what's been keeping my heart and my mind busy has been the power of small acts of leadership. Is something that I've been thinking about lately. And why have I been thinking about that lately? Well, because at the time of recording, and goodness knows what it's going to be like in a week or a month, but the furore around the Christmas party at Downing Street has been raging for about a week now. And, we've had leaders coming out trying to redefine the word party, and trying to redefine the word group, and trying to redefine the word no. And it's just been a really uncomfortable moment to look at leaders behaving in this way. People who set themselves up in a job say, I want to lead a conversation. And to see them acting in this way, I found it deeply sad. And you have to worry about the leadership and the decision-making skills of people who think that's a really good idea. And this is not a party political point at all. I'm in no way affiliated to any party political point. It's just a kind of observing their leadership, which is something I do for a job. I just do not know what they're trying to achieve by just standing in front of people when the whole country knows that they don't believe it. They can't believe it themselves. If the shoe was on the other foot and this was happening to the other political party, they would be making hay. But I'm happy to put that to one side because it was just the inspiration for a different type of leadership, a leadership that's based on smaller acts, on things that are more local and more personal, something that we can actually be in charge of, rather than blaming them or others for failures of leadership. I thought it'd be interesting to think about what are the small acts of leadership that we are responsible for that we could do more of, and what difference would that make to our work, to our society, and to our lives.
Just saying, what's coming up for me straight away, Toe? Thanks for that as an example. I think it's a brilliant one. It's almost like that. Here's an example of what not to be like if you want to engage and lead and motivate and get the best out of other human beings, right? And sometimes you need the antithesis of what you believe good is to really show up what next could look like to some extent.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it is a standout example of poor. It's a standout example of what we should not be doing. And, I think it's also a standout example of the lengths that some people will go to and the cognitive dissonance that's required, the kind of the mental gymnastics that these people must be going through to stand there and articulate these things. But for me, like I said, I just want to put that to one side because that is what it is. And, in many ways, we can't control it. It is outside of our control. So in an attempt to take back some control, I do wonder about those small, more local acts of leadership that we can all do every day at home, at work, and in our life somewhere in between, around what are the acts of leadership that we can do? What does good leadership look like when we're away from work, when we're in our societies, and what's the difference that it can make?
It's really intriguing for me. So one of the things I've been speaking about, Tony, quite a bit recently is this. I feel personally, I'm someone that still works within the corporate space as well as doing, a lot of things outside around culture, leadership, etc. But I feel like whether we're in a corporate, own our own business, whatever, I feel like we innocently, I think a lot of the time, give away our agency. We've got a lot more freedom, a lot more space to be that leader you speak about through those small acts. And I'm wondering if you would agree, disagree, or sort of build on that as a sentiment.
Yeah, I think we should be a lot more comfortable being that accidental leader. I remember many, many years ago, when I was in corporate, we had a brand new chief executive come in. And one of the very first things I remember her saying was that leadership opportunities are taken, not given. And, that just really resonated with me, that every day we are surrounded by leadership opportunities. And it is our personal choice about whether we take those opportunities or whether we find reasons to let them slide by and go, it's above my pay grade. I haven't been asked to do it. I've got too much else going on. But every day, no matter where we are, we will see leadership opportunities. And I think being comfortable in being that accidental leader, so not somebody who is anointed and given the phrase leader, but instead be somebody who just cracks on, who just, when they seize opportunity, just naturally picks them up. And before you know it, they are carrying out the activities, they have the behaviors of leader. And back to your point, Gary, that returns the agency, doesn't it? That returns the power back to us, because maybe not all day, every day, but certainly over the course of a day, we are getting through some great leadership opportunities that are making other people's lives better.
This excites me already, Tony, because I'm already down that whole, imagine what it would be like if people genuinely believed that they are more than their job title, in their body. Like, actually, oh my God, I'm coming as an accountant, or I'm coming as, business development person, or I'm coming as HR. Because one of my challenges personally over the last years has almost been unlearning, releasing those shackles of like the education system, of society telling me that I'll be okay when I've got A, B, C, and D, and going, actually, no, I don't need the car or the big fancy job title or a load of money to step into who I can. That biggest, brightest, innovative version of me isn't once I've sort of got all these accolades, right? Like you're already that, as you said, it's almost pointing to this, like we are already so much more than we realize.
Yeah, absolutely. And and recognizing the difference that even small acts of leadership can make. So it's not a binary, either I'm going to be, Lord of all I survey, or I have got no role. Actually, all of us can make a huge difference. The benefit of small marginal gains, when we all do lots of little things repeatedly, actually, that's when things really do move on. And it can really be the antidote to some of the negativity and just the lower morale that comes from the behaviors that we've seen in some of our more senior leaders lately. So, yeah, I think it's a really interesting topic to explore about, what stops us from having the confidence to do this, and how do we do more of it? How do we find leadership opportunities and run with them? Because if we leave work for a second and think about our outside lives, people don't walk around our local community saying, you're a leader, you're not a leader. And if somebody says you're not a leader, you just sit on your hands and go, well, I'm not a leader. I'm just somebody who does what I do. I let other people in my community. We don't. We all have the opportunity to make a contribution in some way. And we just naturally do that. But when we come into work, it can be more difficult, can't it? Sometimes it is more difficult because we just don't think that that's the space that we should be in, either because of the culture of our organization or because of the history that we bring, or possibly because it's a combination of the two.
Yeah, so interesting. You're sort of leading me really so I'm really intrigued by that part. Maybe it's some of the work that you're doing, Tony, with Cosgrove's is, what are those blockers or barriers at times in your experience, maybe for yourself and those clients that you serve, that sort of you almost become like Mr. Ben. You go from being this whole human at home that understands the world, being a really good parent or whatever, and then suddenly you step through the door in the workplace and like everything shifts. I'm wondering what's actually going on there in your opinion?
I think, ironically, the first and most important building block of us all being kind of accidental leaders is the extant senior leadership that's in place. That if they create a culture and an environment within which it's okay to take these opportunities, back to my point there from the original chief exec, I think that's one of the most important things that a leader can do. Create an environment within which people feel it's absolutely fine to take leadership opportunities when they pass by. And perhaps they start to become proactive and they go looking for them. And I think if that environment isn't there, it's very difficult. And I think if the opposite of that environment there, it is almost impossible. Cultural norms and societal norms are really powerful. We're a tribal beast. We're a herd animal. And we find it really difficult to push back against those cultures. And it takes a very strong individual to push back any norm in a workplace where people are kind of going, if you're almost kind of ostracized for taking leadership opportunities, it's very difficult to take the next leadership opportunity. It just is, which is why I think it comes back to the role of senior leaders. They need to create an environment within which you're encouraged, it's facilitated, and kind of rewards, resources, and recognition flow to the people who do the quote unquote right thing. So that the next round of decision making, when that comes on, people go, well, so and so did something, and I saw that worked out really well. I'm going to be brave enough to go for it. And I think that's before the event. And I think after the event, when the inevitable failure happens, and failure is inevitable, it's, we are going to fail at many, many things, perhaps even more things than we're successful at. When that failure happens, senior leaders have got to let it be known. It's fine. Don't worry about it. Lots of lovely learning there. As long as you weren't reckless and put the entire pension fund on a horse, that's different. But if you just had a go and you did some thinking and you'd done some stuff and it didn't work out, hey ho, no harm, no foul. You just move on. But if you don't do that, don't expect the next round of people to come around and take a punt. They're not going to. They're just not. Of course they're not. Only a fool would.
I just love I love the racehorsing metaphors flowing. I love this idea. I love this idea of putting the whole company investment on number 8 because you got a fluffy red hat or something. But I guess we're nearly Christmas, right, Tony? Like in many ways, I think a lot of the decision making I see within corporate quite often is like the best guess at that nag that seems to have the right coloured hat. It doesn't seem to be particularly well considered based on the skills and the aptitude and the energy in the room. Sometimes it does tend to come from a certain subset of people. That's my experience in the corporate world. And I'm wondering, do you observe any shift away from, I know it's such an outdated discussion, but it's still relevant, command and control, power at the center, etc. Do you see a move towards more decentralized, self-organized, sort of power relinquished ways? Where do you see things at this time?
Yeah, one of the privileges of the work that we do at Masgroves is that we get to speak to a lot of different people from a lot of different organizations in a lot of different levels. So we can genuinely, if we keep our antennae working and our ears open, we can genuinely learn a lot. I think I've seen hints of it, elements of it. I think Me Too movement has made a difference. I think Black Lives Matter has made a difference. I hear people talking about things like unconscious bias in a way that we just didn't 2 years ago. And people accepting that unconscious bias is a thing, and we all have it, and we just need to work through it. And one of the most surest and strongest indicators that you have an unconscious bias is the fact that you might deny that there is any such thing as unconscious bias, because you just that's just kind of, you're dead in the water when that happens. I also see people at all levels in organizations much more open to the benefits of a more varied organization. The power, what is it? The power of the wolf is in the pack, and the power of the pack is in the wolf. We need strength, we need variety, we need diversity, and people are putting themselves in positions to get that diversity more. And I'm also hearing some conversations about organizations happy to hand over the pen from the top team to the organization and say, here, capture your thoughts, share them back with us. But I do not think it is a root and branch change. We're seeing hints of it. We're seeing genuine conversations and real people trying to make real movement. But it is, it's a bit too late. It's a bit too slow, and we have a lot more places to go. But I think the good news is more and more people are now facing in the right direction.
That's really, 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 really positive to hear. Like I say, because I sort of straddle being in corporate and outside, it's always lovely to get this sort of sense check, because I'm, what I'm experiencing. Actually, I had a great conversation with a senior leader in my own business earlier today, and we were just talking about, the inclusion piece, and how challenging it's been for so many of us, even for myself. George Floyd, we knew that these challenges existed, but it was always somebody else's challenge somewhere else in the world. It wasn't really on our doorstep. And I think seeing something like that on video in real life was such a shock for me in my Western privileged ways. Like, it really got me curious about what's been going on the last 500 years, etc. And I'm starting to see some businesses, society starting to weave, and go, actually, we can't be a business separate from society, and we can't have just a CSR agenda and not really be impacting the lives of people outside of our own demographic. And that line seems to be dissolving bit by bit, which is quite exciting, I think.
Yeah, and I think it brings us back to where we were earlier on, talking about the power of small wins and the power of small gains. There is no hope that we're going to come in next Tuesday week and find all of this fixed. It is not, it's just not going to happen. We've got to be realistic. We have got a long way to go, and we're going to get there in lots and lots of small steps and lots of people taking leadership opportunities informally and doing the right thing. And I think if you have that mindset and you allow it to just filter into everything that you do, and you encourage others to do the same, before you know it, you've gone from occasional moments to actually having a genuine momentum and a genuine energy. So I think, having the confidence to do it yourself is great. Having the confidence to do it yourself and helping 10 other people to do it as well is really powerful. And then you can just build from that.
That's a really interesting point, actually. I'm another thing I've been looking at quite a lot is I see a lot of community sort of outside. You might look at, like, let's say, the CIPD, or you might have like Hacking HR or Masgroves. Like, everyone's got their own community within their sphere. What I'm interested in, Tony, is this sort of network effect. So actually, how does that community interface with that community, and how do they go to one another's events, and then how do they share knowledge? And I'm interested within an organizational setting. Are you seeing community building from within to some extent, across function, across regions? That's something that I think is quite underdeveloped as well, is how do you have almost an internal community where there's knowledge sharing effectively across functions, across regions? I'm wondering how that shapes or not some of the work you're doing.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a trend that I've noticed. I mean, it's a trend I can see the benefit of. As you said there, Gary, you can see why that would make a difference. I mean, it's a bit of a cliched phrase, isn't it, about silo busting? People have been talking about busting silos probably since the day after they built the first silo, whenever that was. We know the benefits of sharing information. And isn't it interesting that very large organizations spend a lot of time and a lot of money trying to replicate the informal ecosystems of startups. You'll see large corporate organizations, and I used to work in one of the largest in the world, and they, using phrases around, how can we be fleet of foot? How can we share information? How can we build on each other's ideas? How can we fail quicker? Because these are, and the reason they say it's because they know these are very difficult things to do in large organizations. And, maybe it comes back to the central truth that I want to talk about, which is about actually it's small acts of leadership that are going to get us there, because we've got to devolve the authority and the autonomy down to the lowest level in the organization, because that's where the majority of decisions are made. The majority of decisions are not made in the boardroom. Gary, you and I have both had the privilege of sitting in boardrooms. Some are brilliant, some are really dynamic places, and some are where, it can be slow there sometimes, can't it? And, they're not, they don't get through them sometimes as quick as they would always like. But when you go into the organization, just because you've got so many more people in a hierarchical organization at the bottom, the number of decisions being made there is exponentially greater. And so if you can get them to do the right thing or help them to do the right thing, you can see how that's going to make a difference.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued what you have observed. So what I've observed over the last 2 years, not just for myself, but also in, like I say, the range of communities I interface with, Tony, is this very clear realization that, oh my God, we can use the technology. We don't need to be jumping on planes 24/7.
Yeah.
But oh my God, what comes with that is the risk of loneliness for some people if they like to be around other human beings. I'm wondering what are some of the trends that you're observing that are maybe yet to be fully adopted, or maybe there's a little bit of a sort of tension with these senior leaders that are going, they can see this potential. They know they can add more value, but they're maybe just holding on a bit too tight and wanting to go back to the old ways as fast as possible because it's too uncomfortable. I'm wondering, what are some of the things you're observing, if I may ask, at the moment?
I think the biggest thing I've noticed as we come out of the lockdowns is there is now a willingness from senior leaders to try different. So just, as a reality, we do all sorts of stuff. And one of the things we do is we train people with communication skills, and we give them the skills that they need to work within their organization more effectively. Previously, that kind of had to be done face to face, and it had to be done through a series of workshops. There was no other way to do it, really. There was some online learning, but it wasn't really bought into. Whereas now we see ourselves training large groups of people and sharing skills and knowledge with large groups of people who we will never meet. And that's great. But the really interesting thing is that senior leaders are now just kind of waving this through, going, yeah, of course you can. That's absolutely fine. And we give ourselves the challenge. How can we make these virtual events better than if they were face to face? Not, it's a bit of a compromise, but I'm sure we can make it as pain-free as possible. If we say, no, we now have this technology and we now have a willingness from people to engage with it. So how can we make it even better than it would be if we'd been face to face? 2 years ago, senior leaders probably wouldn't even begun that conversation, whereas now they absolutely get. And of course, they save time, they save money, they save carbon. And if we can make the event better than face to face, well, it's an absolutely no-brainer. We're actually delivering a benefit not just to the bank balance, but also to their clients. And if we can save carbon as well, that's an absolute win that we'd be very proud to have on the balance sheet at the end of the year.
That's stunning. Now, I can't let that go, Tony. I can't let that bit go. How do you make an event online even better than if it was in person?
Gosh, how long have you got?
This is a brilliant lens, though, because no one talks about that. No one talks about it being even better.
Yeah, I think the first thing to do is to capture that statement. The challenge is we've got to make this better than if we were face to face. We're not going to fudge it. We're not going to go, it's the lesser of two evils. This or we cancel. It's like, no, if we're going to do it, it's got to be better. So some things that make it better are the quality of your guests. We now have access to a global pool of talent. So if I want somebody in Melbourne to talk with somebody in Rome to a group of people in Coventry, I can now do that by clicking a few buttons. And that just delivers a fantastically more powerful experience rather than who can I get to Coventry for 3:30 tomorrow afternoon. So that in itself is wonderful. And also we can give them a richer experience. So I can split the groups up into breakout rooms, and I can send them off in the click of a finger. And we all know, Gary, that people will get lost going 15 meters down a corridor, won't they, when they're in a face-to-face workshop? But I can send the right people to the right breakout group with the click of a finger, and I can have group A listening to a podcast, Group B, interacting with a live human being. Group C, watching some fantastic videos. Group D, doing some quiet research. And I can move them around, and I can give each of those a bespoke experience, because I can put them into certain workshop groups at certain times. So none of them is having this uniform experience. It's absolutely tailored to what they need. So when they come back into a larger group and we say, so tell us about your experience. I know some people will have got a lot out of this, so I give them lots of that. Others will want a more variety, so I give them more variety. So we can give them a really specialized, personalized event, whereas previously, we would have been in an underground room at the Holiday Inn in Slough with a flip chart and a 4-box model with some idiot like me stood at the front. Whereas now we've just elevated that. So that's how we give them an even better experience when it's virtual.
That's just awesome. And again, I've got to acknowledge you, Tony, and your storytelling back to where you started and opened up this conversation today. What's on your heart, right? Actually, like, stories connect people, right? Like a 4-box grid doesn't connect people, but a story like you're telling does. I just think it's just awesome.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you something based on the research of people who are proper neuroscientists, not like me. They say that if you use the phrase, "I'm going to tell you a story," the bit of your brain that lights up when you use the phrase, "I'm going to tell you a story," is the bit of your brain that's associated with debt. So if I said to you, "Gary, I'm going to tell you a story," your brain will go, "Oh, you should listen to this, because this story will be full of useful information and resources." And because, again, we're a social animal, your brain will also say, "But you need to repay that debt because you will be indebted to me." Now, back in the day when we were living in caves, that debt would have been repaid by sharing resources, maybe making a fire, because if it didn't, the social contract would be broken. Mm-hmm. And when we're at work, how do we repay a debt for a story? We give them the ultimate resource, which is our time. So if I say to you, "I'm going to share a spreadsheet," a bit of you dies inside. If I say to you, "I'm going to share a story," your brain goes, "Come on, you've got to listen to this. This is going to be really good. Come on, let's go for it." So, as I say, use the force that your brain wants a story. We're going to give you a story.
That's stunning. Oh, Tony, I love it. And just to think, just a great example. Right? Again, back to it. The phone call you put into me is why I wanted to bring you on. And I appreciate you sparing the time today. We're now sharing and learning. Hopefully someone's taking something away. There's just this beautiful, just exponential ripple effect, isn't it? Oh, and this basically started because you picked the phone up and said, "Hey, how are you doing?"
Well, to be fair, Gary, it probably started because you made time to come along to one of our events.
That is true. Good point.
And so that's how we kind of first knew. So I was now indebted to you. So I needed to ring you back and say, "Hi, how's it going? I don't think we've met before, but thanks for making the time to come along to one of our events." You see? So the social contract, that informal process that we have just played out. And then that's what got us here today.
Isn't it true? Look at that. Spooky. Almost like you planned it. Almost like you planned it. So as we go into the rest of our days and also evenings and also into the Christmas break, I just want to give you the last word, Tony, as we start to wrap up. What's your sort of maybe one or two key invitations for anyone that might be with us or maybe watches this back at some point in the future? What would you like to leave them with?
I would leave you with the words of my former chief exec, saying that leadership opportunities are taken, not given. If you want to be a leader, switch on your antennae, open your ears. These opportunities are all around us. I think that's the first important thing. They're out there. Go and grasp them. I think the second thing I would say is, I'm a professional communicator. So communication skills are important. Take some time to improve your comm skills if you want to be an accidental leader. The good news is you can make great progress relatively easy. There's a ton of resources out there. If you can't find any, give me a shout and I will point you in the right direction. Some really quick wins that will move you up a notch or several notches on the scale very quickly and are very easy to use. So improve your communication skills. And I think the third thing is keep your people engaged by showing progress. None of us wants to feel futile. None of us wants to think that we're not making any difference. So when you are leading, when you are being that accidental leader, when you are owning those small acts of leadership, show the difference that you are making as a team. People love progress. They will move towards the energy. And by that, you will just gather around you another group of leaders. And as I said earlier, you can do one thing, but if you've got 10 people doing things, well, then before you know it, you're going to make a big difference.
Fantastic. Tony Cosgrove, thank you for, I was going to say answering the call, but you put the call in. So thanks for us joining our call today. And hopefully people, whatever you're doing, morning, afternoon, or evening, enjoy your days. I wish you all a great Christmas. Thank you, Tony, again for joining me today. Absolutely brilliant. And we will keep in touch, I'm sure. And good luck, everyone. And take care for now. Cheers.
It's our pleasure. Thank you. Bye, Gary.